Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. If you'd like to know more about my knitwear design, please check in the description below. There you will find a link to my Ravelry page where you can find all of the patterns I have available for you to knit up for yourself. Also in the description below, you will find a link to the Watch Barbara Knits Facebook group. We'd love to have you come over and join us. It is a place for us to continue the conversations that we start here on YouTube and also share pictures sometimes because, you know, you can do that. And as always, I love chatting with people in the comments. So please, if you have a question or a thought or a comment, feel free to leave it. Today, my subject, it is just going to be a talking video. I call these Let's Talk because I want to talk about something, and it is based on a question someone left either on a video or in the Facebook group. I can't always remember where these questions happen, but I remember them, and someone asked me what were essential books to have in your knitting library. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't spent a lot of time talking about knitting. I mean, I've done some knitting book reviews, book looks, and shown you some pretty ones. And I thought I would take this opportunity to not only talk about books that I think would be very valuable for you to have, but to also talk about the different types of knitting books that are out there. And I do want to mention, I am in the process of revamping I've got a brand new computer that can handle the rendering, and so I can do videos more easily, and it also had to upgrade to the most recent version of Windows, and it has done something to my microphone. So my sound quality is not as good as I would normally like it, and I apologize for that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix it because I've gone online and there's a lot of complaints that something in the audio drivers in the brand new version of the most recent version of Windows is not interfacing well. So I'm super frustrated about it, but I'd rather have a video than not have a video at all. And I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but onward and upward. So first, there are different types of knitting books, and I thought about, when talking about them, to break them down into like two different, like really general categories, and there's overlap, but one is like books that are much more geared towards technique, that are about learning about knitting and not necessarily as much about patterns. And then you have pattern books, books that are primarily about conveying patterns, that it's a book that is full of patterns. And pattern books are absolutely wonderful to have. I've written a couple. They're great, and they're wonderful to have in your library if you find a subject matter that you really like or a designer who you really like. There's all kinds of wonderful ones out there, and those are very, very personal because it's very subjective, and it's what do you like. I mean, if you don't like knitting socks, having a sock pattern book, regardless of how wonderful it is not really going to be a valuable thing to have in your library. So I don't know that I'm going to focus on those as much because it's just so very, very specific. So I'm going to lean more towards what I would more consider a technique or theory book and talk about those. Although there are some pattern books in there because they're awesome. Now, the number one kind of book that I could not live without is a stitch dictionary. I have a pile of stitch dictionaries. I have a lot of stitch dictionaries. You know, I want more stitch dictionaries. And what a stitch dictionary is a book of stitches. There's no actual like patterns in it. It's just the stitch, and you can do whatever you want with it. And for designers, it is essential. I mean, for most designers, I think. I can't speak for all designers, but having a stitch dictionary sometimes you use the stitch exactly as written. Sometimes you use it as a jumping off point. Sometimes you take a couple different stitches and squish them together. There's many, many different ways to do it, but a stitch dictionary is essential. And if you talk about stitch dictionaries, I don't think you can avoid talking about Barbara Walker, and she's my favorite. This is the first Treasury of knitting patterns, the blue one from Barbara Walker. It is from Schoolhouse Press. I will be putting links. I'll put Amazon links if I can find these books on Amazon in the description below, but I highly, highly encourage you to go to your local knitting store and see if they have some of these books or if they can order them for you, because most yarn stores can order books, because I'm all about supporting local yarn stores. So this is Barbara Walker's. This is number 1, which is full of awesome stuff. And then you have number 2, the red one. Then there is also a green one and a yellow one and one on mosaic knitting. I mean, she's got like 5 or 6 stitch dictionaries. They're amazing. I only brought these 2 out, and if you were only going to have one stitch dictionary, I think it should be this one. One basic stitch dictionary. I think that the second Treasury, simply because it's fatter. It's just bigger. But if you're only going to have one stitch dictionary, having a Barbara Walker knitting Treasury, I think, is a very safe bet. I love them. You can see they always have sticky notes in them, but let me show you what I mean. So what it is it's got all kinds of stitches in it, right? And then the written out instructions on how to do that stitch. It tells you, like this one says, multiple of 20 stitches plus 5. And that means to get the repeats to go out, you have to have it, it's a 20 stitch repeat, and then there are 5 framing stitches to get the side ones to finish. So that's that one right there. And it's got just so many different, we've got a little glare. It's just full of stitches and stitches and the more stitches and then more stitches. And so Barbara Walker. So stitch dictionaries. Now, other stitch dictionary I wanted to show you because I am particularly fond of this type. Japanese stitch dictionaries. And I want to show you this because this is Barbara Walker. Almost all of hers, when you get into later ones, they're charted. The earlier ones, it's all written line by line instructions. When you get into a lot of other, they're all going to be charts. And this is what they look like. And so you have all kinds of crazy stitches, and all you have is a chart. And that's it. That's what the whole book is. Now, one warning though, Japanese stitch dictionaries, they consider knitting. If you look here, that's crochet. Apparently they use the word knitting interchangeably for knitting or crochet. But this is an amazing stitch dictionary. If you want one Japanese stitch dictionary, the 1000 one, most of the stitch dictionaries, Japanese ones, are named in numbers. It's like 200 or 500 is how many stitches are in the dictionary. The 1000 one is my personal favorite because there's so many in there. Now, they're in Japanese. So if you want one of these books, you have to have this book, which is also in Japanese, but it has the descriptions and step-by-step pictures of how to do the stitches. So this is essential, and it actually has clear and simple knitting symbols, but it is pretty much Japanese. Because you have all these different symbols, you can see. And then they have little pictures of tutorials on how to knit them. So if you want Japanese stitch dictionary, these are the 2 books you need. But I will warn you, once you get started, you're not going to be able to stop. Because you'll find another one, you're like, ooh, this has a stitch in it I haven't seen. So again, stitch dictionaries are, as reference books, really, really important for a designer, but also, I mean, just for a regular knitter. They're super, super fun. You can make endless numbers of blankets or scarves, or if you're just knitting rectangles, I mean, think about all the rectangle ponchos. You can just make whatever you want. Now, my chair is squeaky. Sorry, I'm wiggling a lot because I got all these books. Now, another reference book, I have this one. It has everything in it. It is an enormous, it's like an encyclopedia of knitting. If you have a question about knitting, it is probably in here. And I have not read this cover to cover. I'm just telling you that right now. But it's got a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful index, and you can use it. Like here, I just opened it up, and here's ease allowances, Eastern combined method, edge and selvage stitches, edges, elasticity, fabric edge curl. Let's see what it says about fabric edge curl. 177. So maybe you made a shawl or a scarf and the edge is curling. So let's look at 177 and see what it has to say. Left to its own devices, the edge of a fabric done entirely in stockinette will curl, and it becomes apparent why if you consider what a stitch looks like from the side. A stitch is narrow at the bottom where it is pulled through the stitch below, and at the top it is arched back and widened out where the stitches above is pulled through it. And she talks about why stockinette fabric curls. So, if you had that question, and you had this book, you would know the answer. So if you want a big old reference book to keep on yourself, this would be it. Now, Vogue Knitting also just recently put out, I think, something that is the same concept. I don't know how much overlap there is. It's not a book I have because I have this one, and it is Vogue, I have it on my screen over here, Vogue Knitting, the Ultimate Knitting Book, completely revised and updates. It has color pictures in it, which is a plus. I might have to get it just to check it out, but that one I think also is a reference book like this. So this is a good one to have on your shelf. Ooh. It's also very heavy. I'm gonna listen to this. I'm gonna drop it on the ground. You could, if you have any paper that is like curled up and you want to flatten it, that could be your go-to book. And then the last purely reference book, well, not last one, this one. This is one of my books that you will have when you pry it out on my cold dead fingers. I use this one all the time in my designing. It's called Cast on Bind Off. Whoop, whoop. There we go. 211 ways. Now, the same year this came out, the same year this came out, another book with the exact same name by another author came out. It is like half the size. It's a small one, and it's made to like keep in your knitting bag. I've heard people sing its praises. I've heard people who say that they like it better than this one. It doesn't have as many options in it. So, you know what? You'd have to decide for yourself. I personally cannot recommend this one enough. And it also, one of the things I really like is it has the spiral bound lay flat. So it stays flat when you're working on it. There's many a time where I'm working on a design and I go through 3 or 4 different cast-ons and 5 or 6 different bind-offs until I get the one that I think works best in that pattern. And this is the book I use. So this one is definitely necessary. Now, I have a couple books that are more of your hybrid. They're pattern books and technique books at the same time. If you are interested in slip stitch knitting, this book, you need it. It is amazing. It goes through all different kinds of slip stitch, color work, and otherwise. You can do amazing things with it. It is by Faina Goberstein and Simona Merchant Dest. It is a wonderful book. It's called The Art of Slip Stitch Knitting. And again, it has a fairly extensive part in the front. Well, it has like a small stitch. It's got stitch dictionary elements to it. It's got instructional elements to it, and it's got patterns in it. So this book, it has just amazing stuff in it. So this one is really good. It's a hybrid. This one I actually have done a book look for, and I will link to it. This is the same concept. It's an author, a designer who is focusing in on a very specific technique and telling you all about it, and then giving you patterns on how to use it. So if you're interested in short rows, this would be a book that you would want to have. Okay, so those are both very good books to have. And then I'm going to show you this. So this is more of a straight up pattern book, but it does have a section in the front on the lace knitting essentials. So if you're interested in lace, this might be a good kind of intro. But then it has all these beautiful patterns. So this is more of a pattern book. So if you want the patterns, and if you like lace patterns, you would want this book in your library. This is Everyday Lace, Simple Sophisticated Knitted Garments by Heather Zappetti. Now, we have another Barbara Walker book. This is a very good book to have. It is Knitting from the Top. It is all about how to knit seamless garments from the top down. When this book was written, a very large percentage of the garments were made flat and seamed together. And so this was fairly significant in that it's talking about how to knit things from the top down. It is not really patterns. It is teaching you the techniques. If you want to make harem pants, don't know if that's ever crossed your mind. But this isn't, I mean, it says, praise for Barbara Walker, world's fair me, the woman is a genius. You can't, if Elizabeth Zimmerman says that, here, it's impossible to find a simple label for this generous role model. Walker has explored knitting thoroughly and shared it with us in a multitude of ways. Deborah Newton. If all these people say awesome things about it, I think I should too, but actually, so it's great. So if you're interested in garments, seamless garments, this is the book that will be very helpful for you. Now I have had, speaking of the stitch dictionaries, if you are interested in designing a beginner's guide to writing knitting patterns, this is a book that would be wonderful for you to have in your knitting library. This is by Kate Atherley, who really knows what she's talking about, but this it's all kinds of amazing information. This I might need to go into more in depth with a book look. If y'all think that's a good idea, please talk to me in the comments below. But this, again, it depends on what you're wanting to do. Oh, I have this one because I wanted to show you. If you do fall down the stitch dictionary hole, you will find yourself trying to find on obscure sites this Estonian stitch dictionary that's in Russian. It's awesome. That I'm not going to link to because I barely found it myself. Then I have two other books that I want to show you that I think every knitter should read both of these books. The Knitter's Book of Yarn and the Knitter's Book of Wool. Both of these are by Clara Parks. Now, are these books that you have to have in your library? Once you've read them, you may or may not have space. I mean, if you have a limited space, you may or may not want to keep them on your shelf. I think you should read them. And if you have room on your shelf, you should have them because they also have patterns in them, which are awesome. But bare minimum, you need to at least check these out from the library and read them because they talk about wool and they're using kind of, it is all different kinds of wool and different kinds of breeds and everything. And it is really super cool. I'm actually in the process of reading this one. And this one is amazing. This one is amazing. And it goes over all the different kinds of fibers, and it talks about twists, and it talks about all kinds of amazing things. So both of these books, Book of Yarn, Book of Wool, are essential reads. And if you have space on the shelf, you should put them on it. But if not, get them from your library. So, okay. They're all on the ground and in a hot mess, so I'm not going to pick them back up. To the individual who asked this question, I hope that maybe gave you some books to look for. Look for some stitch dictionaries, look for some pattern books for patterns and things that you like. Look for things like this that you'll learn, or the short rows book or the lace book where you'll learn something. They're wonderful, and that they have the patterns in them also that it shows you how to execute. Look for things by Barbara Walker, look for things by Elizabeth Zimmerman. I don't actually have any of her books, but I have read them. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.